Today's main talk is being given by our very own Ashtyn Boggs. Ashtyn grew up the daughter of a single mom, often moving around a lot. Growing up in a religious household, she knew from an early age that religion was not for her. After much convincing from her sister and brother-in-law, she is now an active member of the community and currently studying psychology at the University of Houston. Her talk today is entitled Biases and Compromises. Here's Ashtyn.
So a bunch of y'all have been like, oh, are you nervous today? And I'm like, a little bit, but not for the reasons of actually coming up here and speaking to y'all. It's because I'm kind of giving y'all a bunch of information that later, if we ever get in an argument or are talking about something anecdotal, you get to use against me. So I'm a little bit nervous for that part. But today I'm talking about mental biases and compromises because our brains are kind of these cool, fascinating objects that store every bit of information we have, and it's kind of weird to see them work if you ever get a chance to. You see a neuron and like it fires a synaptic firing, and then you're just like, oh my gosh, this is really cool that we have electricity in our brain, but because it looks like electricity moving through. But I'm also just talking about that because those are the pathways we get to our information. So whenever I'm up here talking about biases, I'm not saying, oh, you're biased against Fox News because they don't give proper information. No, I'm talking about the mental compromises or shortcuts that your brain is taking so that way you can actually get the information that you're looking for. So I kind of have a basic picture up here of how your memory works. It goes to sensory, which is about 5 to 10 seconds. So you're hearing this or you feel something. That's in your brain for 5 to 10 seconds of it actually happening, and then it's not forgotten. Unfortunately, I couldn't find an actual brain map that showed you, oh, it's actually, you're kind of just misplaced it. But it moves then into, if you actually want to try and remember something, it moves into the short-term memory, where it goes, okay, I'm trying to actually remember this. You hold on to it for maybe 20, 30 seconds. I might give you a list of numbers, you might rehearse it, you might use some memorization tools, and then you're going to be moving forward, and then you actually might want to hold on to that memory, and that's usually your emotional charged memories and your long-term memory. Those are things that you might remember the first time you rode a roller coaster, or the first time you got drunk and hated it, or blacked out, or something, but it's how your brain stores things. And then it doesn't get forgotten like this picture says. It just, you didn't build a strong neural pathway to actually remember the information. So it's kind of like you have this piece of information floating out on like an island, and you need to build a bridge to actually get there, and that's your neural pathways. And every time you think of it or use a memorization technique, the bridge gets bigger, and you're able to actually drive across it every day normally versus trying to swim to that information, and it takes you forever to get there. So these are, it's very hard to zoom in, otherwise it gets very blurry, but these are just a few of your basic cognitive biases that mess with your decision making. It says screwed up, but it's really just how your brain is functioning. It's how, and these are just a list of the top 20 common ones. And there are a whole bunch more. You can go onto Wikipedia and you can see a list of like 500 because they're each different for different scenarios. Thank you. So I'm going to start off with hindsight bias. Many of y'all probably already knew about how your memory works. And whenever I came up here and explained it, you were like, I already knew that, even though you might have forgotten it. So hindsight bias is pretty much, you knew it after the fact. And a lot of the times, and I was especially guilty of this growing up, you go, I knew that. Of course it's that. And so you're just like, all right, thanks. Because I had to tell you and you didn't know beforehand. But now you do. So of course you knew it. Availability heuristics is pretty much the frequency or like the most recent thing that you probably are aware of or have like the ability to recall easily, and it's probably because you've heard it a lot. So if I asked you, how are you more likely to die? by a dog attack or a couch, more than likely y'all are all going to say a dog, because how many of y'all have ever heard of a killer couch? I mean, oh, Bradley has. I'm wrong, apparently. But because of the more times you've heard about violent dog attacks, or the times that you've heard about somebody getting like attacked randomly by a dog, you go, well, of course, that's more violent. I'm going to have that occur to me more than a couch. Anchoring bias, moving forward, anchoring bias is pretty much holding on to the first, more than likely, holding on to the first piece of information you attain. So today, you're probably going to remember my story about the bridges to different pieces of information and how you get there. Even though that may not be like what the talk was about today, you remember, oh yeah, I remember something about memory, and you have to build a bridge to get to the information. And so that's anchoring. You're holding on to that one specific detail. And it sometimes can mess with your thinking, because whenever you're doing this and whenever you're making a decision based on this, it's going to be maybe wrong. And you might actually come up and be like, that's not correct. And you have to take a step back and go, well, this is actually what her talk was about today. It was about all these little mental shortcuts, not about memory. Focusing effect is similar to anchoring bias, anchoring bias, because it does require you to focus on that one point. However, it's more or less ignoring the big picture whenever it's referring to focusing bias. I have a family member who's very guilty of this, and it's not me. I'm not going to say his or her name. But we'll be talking, and I'll maybe have said something, I paraphrased it, and next thing you know, that person pulls out their phone, sits there, scrolls through lists of information, and will not move forward in the conversation until we know exactly what that one piece of information really meant. So I cannot paraphrase with that person. I have to be correct all the time, and I have to make sure that what I say is in fact true, but it's okay to paraphrase, all right? Just saying. Exaggerated expectations. This is pretty much how you see things. This is a real photo on the top of a lady being able to flip her hair and have this perfect spiral. So it is actually a real photo, no Photoshop. Yeah, it takes hours, just like you said. You have to get it so right, just in the right moment. But in reality, it's going to probably be like the bottom photo. You're not going to get that perfect shot. You're not going to get that perfect cool flip curl thing. So you have to realize your expectations are not always going to be in the extremes of what you may see on the internet, which I'm sure all of y'all are very much aware of. Something that kind of also goes along with expectation biases is your selective perception. Whenever you do have an expectation of, let's say you're going to go to a party with a group of friends, you might be really excited about this party, but then you go and you hang out with the people and realize it's worse than a high school, or college frat party, and you're just like, what did I get myself into? And so, because you had such high expectations, because of that, you expect to have all these great feelings and great memories from that party, but then you go in and your perception is like, this is a college frat party. Why are people smashing beer cans on their forehead? I don't remember us being this silly. Like, we're 30 years old. But because of that, you see, and moving forward, but I want to go back real quick. Okay, so because of that, you have this perception of the group that you're with that does not make sense. And the reason why I chose this photo is because you're expecting the photo to make sense, but your perception is saying it doesn't make sense, the lines are not straight, and you're like, this is going to make me confused. So that's why I chose this photo. So identifiable victim bias. This is very common for you to see in acts of massive tragedy, where you see groups of people who have been victims of extreme events. One of them that I used for this particular example is the Boston bombing, or marathon bombing, a couple years ago. You see that you will find if there's one person available to take care of a large group, they're going to go to the person they can most identify with and help that person. So this example shows the opposite. It's a man helping a woman. But if you're in a situation where you don't know anybody in that group, you will see maybe a single mom trying to help her kids, and you yourself are a single mom and you would be very paralyzed in fear. You're going to go and help that single mom because that's somebody you can identify, you can find empathy with. And even though you might not have the skill set to help her and her children, that's because you are seeing something in yourself in them. So really, you have to, in acts of tragedy, you have to be more aware of what you can help another person with. Framing effect. So this is how things are put into order, how you might think of like officers or lawyers in this particular instance because they use a lot of loaded questions. They might phrase things in a certain way to elicit a certain response, and that's because you may be given two different pieces of information, but you're drawing two different conclusions because it's the same information. So if I were to ask any of y'all, would you like your bare skin touched by strangers? I see a lot of confused faces because you don't want your skin touched by strangers. But if I were to say, do you want to go get a massage? Some people would be like, yeah, I actually like massages. I want to get a massage. You're getting touched by a stranger, okay? It's still gross. So, planning fallacy, and I know that I should have used probably a different picture for this, but I didn't want it to come off too sexist, because women are guilty of this whenever they say, oh, I'll just be 5 minutes more getting ready. And I'm not saying that all women are guilty of this, no. But you see that commonly brought up in a common stereotype because you overestimate your ability to get something done in a certain amount of time. I'm extremely guilty about this whenever I do my homework. My Spanish homework does not take me 1 hour to complete like I have in my schedule and my planner. It takes me like 5 hours and I'm up till 1 a.m. trying to figure out which conjugation of ear I should use. It's not easy. So your post-purchasing bias, and we are all guilty of this. We all rationalize why we bought something. You may not need a jet ski because you don't live anywhere close enough to an ocean, but you rationalize it as, well, I'm going to go to the beach one day or the lake, and I'm going to be able to use this, and it's going to be great because it is actually kind of fun to get on a jet ski and go really, really fast and hit a wave and then you go flying on the jet ski, not flying off into it, but I think that's kind of fun. Well, it's kind of very true whenever it comes to going to Target. Target has marketed, and this also goes along with the planning effect. Target has marketed themselves so well that you can go into the store saying, I'm just going to buy one thing, I need this one thing. It could be Advil, it could be you need a jacket. You come out buying $150 worth of items because you saw a sale for 20% off and you justify it as, well, the new season is coming, so I do need these things. No, you don't. Target does not have, and so whenever you walk into Target, remember that this is a marketing technique that they're using. They have specifically laid out their store in a way to make you feel like you need these things. And then you buy them, and you feel justified in buying them because you really, really want this. The rose-colored effects. Now, I am not an optimist, so I don't have any examples of my own personal experiences to give you. But I hear it's whenever you look back on memories more favorably, and you actually have good memories. Now, I do have good memories, but I don't look back on most of my memories very fondly. I was a very unruly child. I was a very disobedient child. And growing up in a religious household, whenever you start questioning things or say why whenever you're 3 years old, and you instead of no, you kind of get in trouble for that. So people who are more optimistic, well, not in a bad way, it's okay. But, people who do have a better life growing up or who are taught to be more optimistic and positive outlook, they are going to be looking back on their memories more fondly because they have learned to perceive these events as positive events. And along with that is the fading effect bias, which I think is why people who are more optimistic actually have a tendency to look back on things more better, because the saying is true, time does heal all wounds. It may take a long time, but it does. But the fading effect bias states that you are able to forget bad memories more quickly, and you will have a more positive feeling, a longer lasting, because of a good event. So I think that's another reason why people who are optimistic and people who are pessimistic have that strange difference. And whenever you think back to a memory and you're recalling it, and it's probably because you're already in that mindset. Mood-congruent memory, which is one of the most annoying things to ever hear, especially if you're in an argument with somebody and you actually get upset, is that you are already upset. You're remembering the last time you were in an argument with this person. And then all the times you do have a memory, you're building that strong neural pathway to being irritated with this person. And so another thing, the reason why I chose this picture is because I just thought it was funny. But if you are drunk while studying for a test, you need to take that test while you're drunk. You will not remember the information you studied while you are drunk if you are sober during that test. Because your brain has realized, hey, that event of studying has been linked now to drinking. Drinking is now related to the test. If you are not drinking for that test, you are not going to do well. You are not. What? I don't know. Oh, apparently people in the back do.
Before you move on, I once had a geology professor that said that he recommended that we drink and take the test because he was drunk when he wrote it.
Moodcongruent. I like that. I don't know necessarily if that's how it works, but I like that. I would do that. I want that professor. So post-certainty or pseudo-certainty effects. This one's kind of my favorite just because I'm interested in law a little bit, and it's closely related to the Monty-Hall problem. And so it is basically a two-step or a two-stage probability problem. And because I'm interested in law, I'm always interested in probability of people doing a certain behavior because of this, and that's also tied into my psychology. But whenever you're given 3 choices, and after you choose one option, you're able to see another door that has the wrong thing in it. So like winning a car, you have 3 options. You have 2 goats in the other option. So you have a 1/3 chance of actually getting the car. Well, if after you choose one item, you're able to look at another door that has the wrong thing in it, you are now able to have a higher probability of choosing the car. And I might be explaining this incorrectly because I'm not very good at math. But because of this, you are going to take more risk adversive if you have a positive outcome. So you're going to be very selective the first time you choose a door because you do not want to miss that chance of a free car. But once you find out you know which door has a goat in it, your probability of being like, okay, I have a 50-50 chance now of actually getting the car, and you have a greater opportunity of reward, so it's a positive outcome, you're going to be risky and you're going to just flip a coin and say, yeah, that's the one I want. And in most cases, you're going to get the car because it's a 50-50 chance. But in other cases, you're going to get the car.
So then let's make a deal.
Pretty much, it's let's make a deal. So the mere exposure bias is very common, I think, among new parents because whenever they're buying something for their kid, they're more than likely going to go with the product that they remember playing with as a kid because they enjoyed it, they remember liking it. But as an adult, you're not playing with that as much, so you're just like, oh yeah, my kid will like it because it's Fisher-Price. Fisher-Price is awesome. And it's just because you have been exposed to it. You're not actually, actually like the product. Maybe you don't actually like Coke, but because your family grew up drinking Coke, you choose Coke every time. So it's just the tendency to choose something based out of familiarity, not actual liking or wanting it. The IKEA effect. This is something I didn't know about until last Tuesday. And I was just like, well, wow, okay. The IKEA effect. The unnecessary need to put high value on IKEA products that you semi-assembled. It's absurd. It's just like walking into Target and saying, oh, this is like, I need all these things, but it's IKEA because you think it has higher quality, even though it's the same as something from Walmart. It doesn't have, there's no difference in quality, but because it's IKEA, you're like, yeah, this is really great stuff. I want it. IKEA furniture looks good in the catalogs. Target furniture does not look good in the catalogs. It's the same quality. It doesn't really change either way. Oh, and the not invented here bias is pretty much people who work at a certain company, if they're a designer or they're a product person, they will more than likely buy from their own company because they prefer it. They know the quality of it. It may not be better or worse for them, but they'll still choose their own quality of whatever product their company makes. So the blind spot bias. This is kind of, I guess, my last slide, and I hope I have enough time. Okay. All right, because I talk kind of fast whenever I'm nervous, but the blind spot bias is your bias to point out other people's bias without acknowledging your own. Hypocrites. We all do it. You'll maybe sometimes go, oh, that person's just doing that because they're mean or they're this or that. And it's because they're in that mood congruent stage where they're upset. So they remember all the times that they were also upset. So they bring that back up in an argument and point that out to you. And you're like, oh, well, that's just their bias. That's just the way that their brain is working and compromising to fix the situation. But then you come back to it and you're like, well, maybe I accidentally yelled at them for something I shouldn't have done, and now I'm guilty too. And that's okay, because we're all human, we all make mistakes, and the important thing is that we all try to actually just recognize that we can change. So I guess that's it for my talk.
I was just wondering if there were, there's biases where you learn things a certain way, like you said, the first couple things that you hear in a list or whatever. And perhaps there's a way to use this for good. Like professors or teachers in general can use these biases that they know we all have to get their point across better.
I absolutely agree with that, and that's something I actually have a problem with the Texas education system right now. The current STAR testing uses framing effect to change word order, and it confuses students because they're used to seeing the set of information that they're given by their teachers in a way that they can actually absorb the information, but then the test does not give them any chance to understand it. So I completely agree with that. Teachers should be taught how to actually, or the test takers should be taught to frame the question properly, that the student can actually understand it.
Because what you were saying about what you call the IKEA bias, I witnessed this firsthand with And I saw this video on this that a lot of people fall into this trap thinking that with clothing especially, you know, when you buy a designer piece of clothing, it's not actually that designer making it, it's the same 12-year-old Bangladeshi kid just sewing a different tag into the same exact clothing, whether it's Macy's or Walmart.
That's very true. Well, I mean, it's sometimes true, because other times you do actually get a store that does make individual quality products. But like you said, if you do go to Nordstrom's, I recommend looking at the actual percentage of cashmere or spandex in your product, because more than likely you're going to Nordstrom's, you're spending a lot of money on nylon and spandex, not actual cashmere. Any other questions?
I saw a hand.
Honestly, any question?
Let me ask it.
I would like to challenge that. Go ahead. I'm honestly okay with any question.
So, an interesting fact about Target is that the effect of the color red is very significant on humans, because red is the color of a sense of urgency. That's why it's encouraging us to buy this or buy that. Because it has big letters, it's red, it makes us think that, oh, we need to do this now.
That's a very good point about Target. And what's funny is about IKEA is the color blue is supposed to be calming and supposed to be relaxing. So I think that's why they make it a very long walk in there, and most of their stuff is blue, because they want you to be calm whenever you're making these decisions about buying things.
That's why there's no such thing as blue light special anymore.
Probably. But Target is crazy good at marketing and figuring out people's brains. And I feel the same way about Google and Facebook. They know how to manipulate your biases. They know how to phrase things. They have specialists who come in here and are like, okay, people will respond better if you say it's 77% full versus you have a 23% empty tank or whatever. So they're very good at knowing how to phrase things. One more question?
Thank you. With regard to the planning bias, procrastinators do the opposite. They tend to overestimate how long it would take to do something, so they don't do it.
That's a very good point. I would have to say, yeah, I agree with that. All right, I guess if there are no more questions or comments or concerns, I will step away and hand the mic over. Thank you.